Product gap. So I actually started 10XTS as a chief technology officer, and I'm one of the founders. But in the last couple of years, and I've lost track over the 5 or 6 years we've been doing it because a startup life. But I switched to the role of chief product officer, and we were able to promote another co-founder to chief technology officer because he was spending most of his time actually focusing on development, and I was trying to help get the product defined. And one of the things I've noticed throughout my career is that there's a statistic that 80% of all at least IT projects fail, and they fail because of requirements and problems, and now what I refer to as the product gap and a lack of understanding. So let's get started. Take a look at the typical story of a startup. So there we go. All right. So the startup typically starts with a business person and a technology person. We're going to call them biz and tech. And the business and technology person come together and they want to solve a problem. And this problem, in this case, will be solved with a software product. So they get started in their journey, and the business person is really tasked with understanding the marketplace, understanding what opportunities lie in solving this problem. I have a friend, Ronald Myers, who's an entrepreneur professor, and he likes to say there's no unsolved problems, and this is true. So what we're really looking for is better solutions. So the biz person will typically spend um, a lot of time focused on this and trying to get insights into, well, how are current solutions, how's this problem currently solved, and what are the opportunities with shortcomings in those solutions. What are people looking for? What are they frustrated by? And excuse me. And then the biz person starts talking to the tech about this, and they start communicating back and forth and getting a really good understanding of what's going on. So at the same time, the technology person is responding back, and they're doing things like they're writing code, but they may be creating a user experience at first to try to describe how we would solve the problem, hitting the main features. They'll be defining some prototypes and then refining those into an MVP to start having this conversation with the market. And the biz person will become involved in getting feedback and those kind of things. So this back and forth conversation is what's creating the product. The product emerges from this, and generally because it's a couple of people, you're talking, I'm showing two here, maybe three or four. It works pretty well, in your conversation and the natural interaction is actually helping cover over a gap. And this gap is something you won't see in a very small team. It'll show up in communication, sometimes some conflict and misunderstanding as you try to get alignment. But there is a gap there that they're just able to bridge through this conversation because it's a very tight communication loop. Now, what will happen is that the organization will scale, or some startups don't always start off with this very tight interaction between a tech and a biz person. Sometimes you have some business people that are hiring outside technical help. They're outsourcing. There's a mix of in-house and outsource and things like that. And that's where the gap really starts to show itself. So we go to the more scaled organization. You have a whole group of business people, and the business people are going to go out and do the same kind of thing. They're going to go and find these insights. They're going to go and look at these ideas. They're going to be generating more and more information, more and more ideas, and they're going to be communicating to the best of their ability to the technology team whose job is to build the product. But generally speaking, the people involved, the biz people, are not product people. They're not product managers. They don't have a lot of background in product. They have a lot of background in sales or business or process even. And so they're doing their best to define this, but the things coming down aren't super actionable. They're not always defined to the level the tech team needs them. And so what they start getting back from the technology team kind of looks like the matrix here, where the encoding works for the program. They're generating code, but it's not always understood. And you start, if you think about when you have more people, when you're dealing with one or two people building everything, the cycle's a lot faster. You get feedback faster, and you're building a little bit slower. When you multiply the number of people, they're producing more on a regular basis, and you're getting reviews and things like that. But the biz people aren't always giving the feedback you need in the reviews, and you start to have these misses. And the challenge gets to be whenever you're whenever you're whenever you're working at this scale, any small misses become bigger and become bigger reworks and things like that. And so you still end up with a product, but you end up with a product that still has a lot of question marks over how do things get done. Some manual workarounds, some maybe misses in how the product fit and things like that. So where do we go from here? Well, let's take a look at a scenario to understand the root of where some of these misses are, so we can understand how to bridge this gap. So we're going to take this is actually an example project, a company I did a thought experiment on around events. I have 4 kids, and so I attend a lot of events, and everybody's taking pictures of these events, and they're all taking the same picture, which I always find interesting because we take digital pictures now, and with devices that are connected to a network. So we're taking the same picture when we have something that's infinitely communicatable and infinitely copyable. And it never has made a lot of sense. So I started thinking up, if you were trying to solve this problem, what would be the top line things that you would need to be able to do? So the top line features become pretty simple. So if I'm going to go to we took prom pictures for the dance. So we created an event called Prom Pictures. And for that, we're going to go and we're going to create a QR code so people can scan to join the group to share photos. We're going to be able to take photos and upload them and share them, and people are going to be able to view the photos. So a really tight set of features: create an event, share pictures, invite people to share, print a QR code for the event to help with the sharing, view pictures from the event. But immediately, if I tell a developer to create an event, there's a lot of stuff to fill in there. Like, what do you need to know to create an event? Are you just creating a date and time and a name? Or do you want a location? Do you want a link to a map? How full does this event need to be? Does it need to write to people's calendars? Things like that to really flesh it out and become really a set of stories that can actually be implemented by a development team. When you talk about uploading pictures, where are you uploading them to? Does this platform provide storage? Is it running on top of an existing album structure, or like a Google Drive or Dropbox, or people using their own file sharing, or is it dedicated and part of that? How are people invited? When you say invite people, are you picking from? Is it on a phone and you're picking from your address book? Are you using SMS? Are you using email? All these kind of things. The QR code. What does it lead to, and what's the experience when I scan and join? How do I authenticate myself further? And then viewing the pictures. How are they accessed? How do people see these things? So you start seeing that what seems like simple high-level feature requirements need more definition to make them actionable. And then there's also the tendency to focus on these very high-level bullet points of the most typical journey of creating an event, sharing, scanning a QR, taking a picture. Those type of things is the main journey. But there's more to build. The software needs more than that to operate. So we get some other features that are typical but aren't always expressed. Or let's go before we get to that. Let's talk a little bit more about the QR code. And these are some misses that could happen with the QR code. So it's pretty easy. There's libraries to go create a URL into a QR code for free. It's easy to do. There's websites for it. But with a QR code, does it just show up on the screen? If you want to save the QR code, if it was on a web page, you could right click and save image, but that's not very user friendly. So, do you need a save button? Do you need a share button to send it to people? What are the different ways you're going to deal with this QR code? So, this is where you tell to display a QR code. The development team may just simply render a desktop display, and they're asked, well, how do you get it? They're like, well, you could snap the desktop and deal with it there, or you could, copy and paste the image, but it's not real clear what's going to go on with that, and that could create some confusion in the marketplace. Um, Another place that things get missed is where there's lots of options or ways to do something. That's like a gallery. How are you going to show the photos? There's lots of ways to show photos. You could do a slideshow that shows all the photos. If they're not real organized, they may not be really useful, and it's very time consuming to watch. You could show a list of photos with those horrible generated names that make it hard to understand what they are. A more typical one, you might go with the thumbnail gallery where you can go through and page it, which creates a nice user experience, using some real estate. Or you might just show thumbnails that bring up the screen in a different way. So there's lots of ways to do this, and there's lots of gray area for the development team to pull in. And so as a CTO, this is where you're really challenged in that you're getting these product requirements, they're very high level, and you're having to help fill in these gaps to guide the development team and work back with the business team to pull them together. So there's not these misses. And then there's the other requirements that people don't think about for a product that aren't thinking through the whole experience. So we said before, you're going to create an event, share the event, share photos and things like that. Well, someone's got to sign up for the initial account. Sign up is a process that needs to be defined, and what do you require to do it? Is it email? Is it SMS? Are you phone oriented or computer oriented, or some combination between the two? Are you, what's your subscription plans and payments look like? Is there a free tier, or is it always paid? And who pays? Is it just the person that sets it up, or is it participants and those kind of things? What about the deleting a picture? What if someone uploads a picture and then they decide they don't want to share it? What if they do it from their camera roll and grab the wrong picture and need to delete it? Right? What if it's inappropriate? Those kind of things. To delete a picture, and then an event needs to be closed out. So how do people know the event's done and you stop receiving new pictures? And then when you're inviting people, a lot of times, we're told to go invite a person. So doing stuff in bulk is a lot different than doing stuff single. So if you've ever used a early web system, my mother used to hate the move from my mom. My mom was a DOS aficionado, and she loved the data entry screens and things on the database and on the mainframe, and was very good and adept at doing mass entry. When she moved to windowing systems, she called it the tyranny of clicks, and it took forever to do anything. Web systems have been like this too, where you're adding someone in when it creates a form, or doing one at a time is a necessary function often. But when you do 30 or 40, it gets to be very tedious. So these are the kind of things that aren't thought about in that main path. And so this is where you do a first build, and a lot of times on the business side, they don't articulate this, but they're assuming you think of it. And so you need to drive these things out so the product gap gets built. Otherwise, you have this gap of features and experience. And experience is an important aspect of this. When we get to talking about really what is a product, and this concept is one that I think also leads to a lot of the misses that happen, is people think about a software product as being the user interface. It may be a little bit more into the user experience, but they're thinking about the components they really direct. And when you get the MVP, it's a lot about the UI, and you really focus on the headlining features. So you're really looking at just, again, how do I create an event? How do I share a photo? these very in your face type of features and notifications and things you're interacting with, and they're not always thinking about some of the other things that need to happen with the system, especially a more complex one. In addition to just the base user interaction, a lot of times we have some type of upload or download. And these uploads could be like a single picture, could be a group of pictures, and a different kind of application. It could be uploading a list of users, could be uploading a list of people to invite, like an import. So you have these bulk ads and bulk updates that a lot of times happen with uploads. Same thing with download. You download all the photos in a zip. Are you able to export your records and data? Are you able to move data around, things like that? So you get these more batch processes. Systems also need scheduled tasks. So if you're going to send out reminders, if you're going to run things on a regular basis, you start getting the need for scheduling things. I started my career doing a bit of batch programming, and while we don't think about it as much, batch is still very much alive with scheduled jobs. And then you have notifications, sending out text and emails. How do you make things proactive? One of the big things that helped the web early on was blogs. And the idea of a blog was something you didn't have to go back and manually poll to go find updates. So people are expecting notification systems, but they're not usually a front of mind thought when you're thinking about that first interaction with the user interface and getting into it. And then the product is not just the software. I think this is probably the biggest challenge in building a product organization in a startup is the assumption is that everything the customer needs to do is through the software. But there's all kinds, but the product is the product experience. It's everything the customer will do to interact with the product and company. That starts with the sales process. How does someone even learn how this product will meet their needs? Now, yes, there's some sales and marketing material, but the need to have demo, trials, these kind of things become product requirements. And where that interface is with the sales process and product, you got to think about how that experience is. And then on top of that, there's how do you get started? A lot of times when I'm evaluating software to use for one of my startups, I spend a lot of time on their help site and they're getting started. And like I'll tell you, I think videos are very helpful, but I don't like videos. So if your product doesn't have a text version of how to do something and get started that I can read and skim, or like a transcript from the video, I won't buy your product. So those are kind of experience issues of how do people learn how to use the product, because that is part of the product experience, and that's how you're setting them up for success. What's the onboarding process? A simpler application like sharing pictures, you come on and maybe you have to bring some people on for the event and things like that, and it's very much transaction based. A more complex B2B solution, in our case in 10XTS, we're setting up and showing issuances of securities. We're recording the historical transactions. We're uploading documents to go with it. So onboarding for us is like a 30-day process of getting information in the right format and getting it in and helping the customers with that. And from a product standpoint, the ability to generate and explain how to fill out a spreadsheet or a CSV to upload for this bulk update and make it easy, those are key parts of our product because those are early parts of the product experience. In the early stage, you don't have as much UI for that. It's more manual, and you start building out the tools, but you have to work with customers to learn how to even do that. So this onboarding process is a key part of the product experience that's often missed. And then there's support. Do you provide 24-hour support? What's your interactive support look like? What's your support tools look like? Is there a knowledge base? How do I help myself? Hands-on, a white glove is great, but people are in a hurry, and so they will need they will want to be able to help themselves and not be tied to a phone. New ideas. How do you engage with customers to generate what your next features need to be? What do you offer custom features? These again are part of the product and product experience and start dictating how you build things. How do you deal with integrations and so forth? So you want to make sure these kind of things are addressed. And then also you have to understand what your exit is. People, if people have photos in for an event, they'll want to know they can download them all and walk away with them without having to be tied to your service. Companies do change financial service providers, CRMs, and things like that. So you need to know how people get their data back out. Because if you don't have an exit strategy for your customers, they won't want to enter. People are very wary of having their data held hostage by systems. And in all of these, the CTO and the CTO's team are involved in these discussions. But early on, you have to establish that these are not just technology functions. These are people and process. These are tools that have to be written. The people that write code, especially deep in the product, are generally not the people that are best to address customer issues because they're really thinking about how the system operates at its most fundamental level, not what it's like to walk up to the system cold and do it. So you've got to expand that team and understand how to fill those in. So to help think about meeting the product gap, kind of the summary of things to consider. When you think about your product, the UI comes up, but also be thinking about the other types of processes, importing or bulk add and update, exporting, bulk download. How are you going to handle notifications, proactive events like scheduled jobs? What's your API and integrations going to be like? You may not be putting these up front, but you need to understand where your strategy will be. Do you employ something like Zapier? What is your API going to look like? Your API is not going to be the services you provide to your UI. There's a different kind of gateway to that for security and performance reasons. And then from a customer success standpoint, these are big parts of the product of what's the sales process. When do the sales start engaging with the product to get a customer familiar with it so they'll want to make the purchase decision? How does the customer get started? How do they onboard? What's your integration strategy? What's your support look like? And then what does exiting look like? And this is a combination of product features, but the product experience expanding out to help sites and knowledge bases and videos and text and the different things that you'll need to create a complete product experience as your product goes from MVP to a full platform. And that is the product gap. Let's see if I can get my video to come back.
You are back.
Oh, good.
Yeah, you're back. So this is very interesting.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I was a little nervous. I was just talking to myself there for a while, but
Yeah, no, it looked good. It didn't have any problems during the presentation, and your videos playing nicely. I'm always worried about it, how it's gonna freeze as well. So I see that. What was it really for you to change from CTO to CPO? I'm sure you didn't, get rid of all your responsibilities as a CTO. What was the main need for it that you've seen, since it's your company, you're the founder of it?
Well, I mean, it was really a discussion with the CEO, and it was the recognition of the fact that I was spending more than half my time on product definition. Now, I'm actually helping write code still, so I'm still very much on the technology side. But
Okay.
early on, I identified from past experience we are going to need a product management function, and it was going to need to get built out with the company. So we started off with what I call the Office of Product, which was this idea that the CEO and I and a few other key people together were providing that product management function as a virtual group together. And then we just kept maturing, and it was just decided to recognize I'm the product person. One of the other challenges we had was that a lot of us have come from project development and service development in the industry. And so there is a tendency to start migrating towards custom solutions and custom features and things. And so I became known as the product advocate, and I was always talking about the product and repeatability, and that we start looking too hard at one customer and not balancing the needs of a market, we're going to end up with a bunch of small custom solutions, not a product. And I was pretty
Yeah.
dogmatic about it, so they just I was acting like the high priest of product, so they made me the high priest of product.
Yeah, no, this is great. And there's a comment from the LinkedIn side of things. I suggest at the left side of the product checklist, the invisible but important part, which is product performance. And is a comment talking about the product performance is quite important for the overall performance and the quality of the product.
Yeah, performance is a real interesting life cycle issue. So I've worked with some early stage startups when they're first doing their MVPs, and it's really setting what the expectation is. So I'll launch a product where the product has no automation for a piece of it, but it will have a submission process, and you'll be notified and go back and get the result. And people will actually be using offline tools to go do it and bring it back at the result. But as long as you're setting the expectation that it's a 24-hour process, you can actually create an experience that starts telling what future automation will look like. So I think that's really a key to performance is setting that expectation. There's a lot of things. I mean, there's security and a lot of things I don't put on the product list from a technology standpoint, because honestly, technical people are good, just like the person that suggested that, of thinking about performance on those issues. I would say that, especially early on, it's more important to create good expectations and known performance. And then sometimes you'll just run things slower so you can get a little more done, or have features that aren't quite ready. And it's always easier to say it'll be done in a day and have it typically finish in 4 hours than it is to say it'll finish in an hour and it take 4 hours.
Yeah. Thank you very much, John. This was a great insight to the product and product development and how to make the product a visible thing. It's great because quite a lot of times we talk about technologies, but we need to talk actual the product and what are the stages. I really appreciate your time and looking forward to see you in the panel.
All right, thanks. Looking forward to it.